Alright, first and foremost, I want to give call Allah Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shah. All praises to the Most High God. The name is only begotten Son, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. It's your brother, times upon you by Yahweh, to coming back at you through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shah. With a quick dagger, man, to you Friday evening, Saturday evening, Sabbath keepers. You know, a lot of brothers try to come up against, the biblical Sabbath, which is the lunar Sabbath. They use Numbers, the 10th chapter, to try and do it. I'm gonna go ahead and read it, and then I'm gonna go ahead and get into this article that gives a further, understanding on the topic. So when you brothers and sisters run into this, you know how to deal with it. This is Numbers 10 and 11, and it came to pass on the 20th day of the second month in the second year that the cloud was taken up from off the tabernacle of the testimony. Right? So what brothers will do is they will run to this verse in Numbers 10 and 11 and say, well, okay, it was the 20th day. And then they'll hop right to verse 33 that says, and they departed from out of the mount of the Lord 3 days' journey, right? And the ark of the covenant of the Lord went before them in 3 days' journey to search out a resting place for them. So they'll say, according to your lunar Sabbath, you have the 1st, the 8th, the 15th, and the 22nd. According to this, if they started on the 20th day and they took a 3 days journey, that means that they had broke the Sabbath. So the lunar Sabbath can't be right, right? So we're going to dispel that right now, because brothers and sisters that come with this argument clearly don't know what a 3 days journey is according to the Bible. So I have this article pulled up on worldslastchance.com. I will leave the link in the either the description box, or I will leave it under a pinned comment, as I usually do with any other video that I put sources and documents, so y'all can go ahead and click this stuff out, click on this stuff and get these understandings for yourself. So okay, the account in Numbers 10 and 11 through 33 shows that the Israelites were traveling on the 22nd day of the month. This could not have been allowed had it been a weekly Sabbath, right? So let's read down. Answer. The journey, which began on the 20th day of the second month in Numbers 10 and 11, which we just read, is called in Scripture a 3-day journey. The statement is made that verse 33 says that the Israelites would journey 3 days to search out a place to rest, but the Bible does not say this. It rather calls the journey a 3 days journey. What is the difference, you might ask? What is a 3 days journey? It is a period of is it a period of 3 complete days? Is it 72 hours? No. The Bible gives us a clear example of exactly what a 3 days journey really is. We find the answer by noticing a similar account which mentions a particular day's journey in Numbers 11 and 31. States, now a wind went out from Yahweh, Salakia, and it brought quail from the sea, and left them fluttering near the camp, and a day's journey on this side, and about a day's journey on the other side, all around the camp, and about 2 cubits above the surface of ground. Right? Notice carefully that the quail was 2 days' journey, but the children of Israel gathered them a day and a half, according to Numbers 11 and 32, which tells us, and the people stayed up all that day, all night, and all the next day, and gathered quail. It took the people a day and a half to gather 2 days' journey worth of quail. How in the world can this be done? It is possible because a day's journey is not speaking of a 24-hour period, but rather a unit of measurement. In other words, 1 day's journey equaled a distance traveled. Smith's Bible Dictionary has this to say concerning the phrase. The day's journey was the most usual method of calculating distances in traveling. Genesis 30 and 36, 31 and 23, Exodus 3 and 18, 5 and 3, Um, Numbers 10 and 33, 11 and 31, 33 and 8, Deuteronomy 1 and 2, 1 Kings 19 and 4, 2 Kings 3 and 9, Jonah 3 and 3, 1 Maccabees 5 and 24, 7 and 45, Tobit 6 and 1. Though but one instance of it occurs in the New Testament, Luke 2 and 44, the ordinary day's journey among the Jews was 30 miles. But when they traveled in companies, only 10 miles. Neapolis formed this first stage out of Jerusalem according to the former, and Beeroth according to the later computation. All right. According to Mr. Smith, Numbers 10 and 11 is meant to be taken as Israel was about to embark on a 30-mile journey. This journey could be accomplished in less than 3 days. Just think about the passage in regards to the quail. Notice not only did Israel travel the length which the quail were, but also gathered them in the process, a whole 2 cubits high worth of them. Right? So let me just go into a day's journey, right? The biblical account of this. Let's go into a day's journey, right? This is from the this is on Bible Hub, International Standard Bible Encyclopedia, Day's Journey, right? Genesis 30 and 36, Numbers 10 and 33, Numbers 11 and 31, Hermaris Hodes, Luke 2 and 44. The common way of estimating distances in the East is by hours and days. This is naturally in a country where the roads are mere bridle paths or non-existent, as in the desert. The distance traveled must, of course, differ largely according to the difficulties of the way, and it is more important to know where night will overtake the traveler than the actual distance accomplished. A day's journey is now commonly reckoned at about 3 miles per hour, the distance usually covered by a loaded mule, the number of hours being about 8. Hence, a day's journey is 24 miles, and this may be taken as a fair estimate for Bible times, right? So let's go back to the article. We might also mention that the Bible speaks of a Sabbath day journey in Acts 1 and 12. This too was simply a distance or measurement which one was allowed to travel on the Sabbath. Although this was probably an interpretive restriction, it was most likely followed by the Israelites of the first century. Let's go ahead and get the understanding on that. Sabbath day's journey, right? So this is a Sabbath day's journey used only in Acts 1 and 12, where it designates the distance from Jerusalem to the Mount of Olives, to which Yahushua led his disciples on the day of his ascension. The expression comes from rabbinical usage to indicate the distance a Jew might travel on the Sabbath without transgressing the law. The command, Salakia, against working on that day being interpreted as including travel, see Exodus 16 and 27 through 30. The limit set by the rabbis of the Sabbath day's journey was 2,000 cubits from one's house or domicile, which was derived from the statement found in Joshua 3 and 4 that this was the distance between the ark and the people on their march. This being assumed to be the distance between the tents of the people and the tabernacle during the sojourn in the wilderness. Hence, it must have been allowable to travel thus far to attend the worship of the tabernacle. We do not know when this assumption in regard to the Sabbath day's journey was made, but it seems to have been in force in the time of Christ. The distance of the Mount of Olives from Jerusalem is stated in Josephus to have been 5 stadia or furlongs and 6 stadia, the discrepancy being explained by supposing a different point of departure. This would make the distance of the Sabbath day's journey from 1,000 to 1,200 yards, the first agreeing very closely with the 2,000 cubits. The rabbis, however, invented a way of increasing this distance without technically infringing the law by depositing some food at the 2,000 cubit limit before the Sabbath, which is preparation day. You get everything that you need before the Sabbath. So on the Sabbath, you don't have to go and, break the Sabbath by going to buy things, right? Because, you're not supposed to be buying and selling. Okay, and declaring that spot a temporary domicile that might then proceed 2,000 cubits from this point without transgressing the law, right? And in some cases, even the intricacy of preparation was unnecessary. If, for instance, the approach of the Sabbath found one on his journey, the traveler might select some tree or some stone wall at a distance of 2,000 paces and mentally declare this to be his residence for the Sabbath, in which case he was permitted to go 2,000 paces to the selected tree or wall and also 2,000 paces beyond. But in such a case, he must do the work thoroughly and must say, "Let my Sabbath residence be at the trunk of that tree." For if he merely said, "Let my Sabbath residence be under that tree," this would not be sufficient because the expression would be too general and indefinite. Other schemes for extending the distance have been devised, such as regarding the quarter of the town in which one dwells, or whole town itself, as the domicile, thus allowing one to proceed from any part of the town to a point 2,000 cubits beyond its utmost limits. This was probably the case with walled towns, at least, and boundary stones have been found in the vicinity of Gaza with inscriptions supposed to mark these limits. The 2,000 cubit limits around the Levitical cities, Numbers 35 and 5, may have suggested the limit of the Sabbath day's journey also. The term came to be used as a designation of distance, which must have been more or less definite. All right, let's get back to the article. So where was I at? So I'm just going to start from here. We might also mention that the Bible speaks of a Sabbath day's journey in Acts 1 and 12. This too was simply a distance or measurement which one was allowed to travel on the Sabbath. Although this was probably an imperative restriction, it was most likely followed by the Israelites of the first century, which we just went into the whole Sabbath day's journey. And we know it's talking about a distance of travel. It's not talking about an actual, 24-hour day. All right. I should further point out that there is nothing in the text that tells us we should believe the entire 3 days journey was accomplished before the Sabbath of the 22nd. They could have stopped on the Sabbath and then picked up their journey where they had left off. A sister in our local assembly gave the example of a trip to California. She stated that from Georgia to California in a car would take 3 days. However, if you stopped off somewhere and stayed a few days to see the sights, it may take you 5 or 6 days to get to California. Does this mean from Georgia to California is not a journey of 3 days? Not at all. Keep in mind that those who believe in a continuous 7-day cycle with no interruption have no choice but to have the Israelites marching around the walls of Jericho on the Sabbath. Yet they try to use a traveling argument against the lunar Sabbatarians. This is an inconsistent argument, which I totally agree with, right? Because we know, back in the day, if you was to break the Sabbath, you get put to death. These people did not get put to death, so evidently they did not break the Sabbath. All right. So with that being said, that's just a quick way to deal with this. So with that, I'm gonna give all praises to the Most High in the name of His Son Yahushua and say Shalom.